Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Midweek Minutes. This past Sunday, we continued our study in the book of James, and the title of our message was Stability in the Storm. And our passage was James chapter 1, verses 13 to 17. It says, "And remember, when you are being tempted, do not say, 'God is tempting me.' God is never tempted to do wrong, and he never tempts anyone else. Temptation comes from our own desires, which entice us and drag us away. These desires give birth to sinful actions, and when sin is allowed to grow, it gives birth to death. So don't be misled, my dear brothers and sisters. Whatever is good and perfect comes down to us from God our Father, who created all the lights in the heavens. He never changes or casts a shifting shadow." Stability in the storm. This passage, the Apostle James is warning us to not get it twisted when we're tempted. Sometimes we want to blame God and blame other people, but the passage clearly says we're drawn out by our own desires. So I want to share two things with you today from this verse. First, temptation is personal. It's your own desires. There are certain things that tempt you that won't tempt me, and vice versa. For example, I could never be tempted with anything that has mint, whether it's mint chocolate, mint ice cream, mint tea. Ugh, keep that away from me. But if you were to put a mint condition Tiger Woods baseball cap, you'd have me at hello. Even if I didn't have the money, I might be tempted to place a bid on it. So we have our own desires that causes us to be tempted. And so we have to first recognize that our temptation is personal. The second thing I want to share is that our temptation and defending against it is practical. Yeah, we have to practically defend against temptation. Frederick Douglass was credited for his famous quote, which says, "It's easier to build strong children than to prepare broken men." Again, it's easier to build strong children than repair broken men. You see, it's practical. In the same way, it's easier for us to run away from the onset of temptation than play with that temptation, than expect to be able to pull the plug and disengage. No, we can't play with it. We have to be practical and set boundaries. Thinking about playing with it. You ever seen a cat? Cats are one of the many animals that like to play with their food. A cat will play with a lizard that they catch, paw it around and taunt it and just be so cruel to the lizard and may not even eat it. But I've seen a case where a cat was playing with a snake, playing with it, taunting it, and thinking, it was all good. Then that snake rose up and bit the cat. And that cat, I bet, was very disappointed that he went ahead and played with his food like that, because it came back to bite him. And so when we play with temptation, it can come back to bite us. One practical way for us to avoid temptation is to, as much as we can, remove it from our presence. If we know we're tempted in a certain area, don't put ourselves in that situation. Last night we had Journey Group, and Andrea brought chocolate cake. And someone asked her, "Why do you bring chocolate cake when you don't like chocolate?" She said, "Well, if I bring chocolate cake for dessert, then I won't be tempted to overindulge and have dessert when I'm not trying to have dessert now." And that's a very good point. There's so many things that come at us and we don't have any control over it. But I think there's even more things that we can avoid by setting up boundaries, by having principles, by having rules and guidelines in place that enable us to practically avoid temptation as much as we could. We have a point from Sunday that says, "In the storm, stability is garnered when we take immediate and decisive godly action." So I encourage you, realize that temptation is personal. Trust God to reveal to you those things that are triggers that you need to abstain from, those crosses, those thorns in your side that you have to bear. And two, take immediate decisive action. Be practical. Run away from it. Set up boundaries so you don't fall into temptation. Thank you for joining me for another edition of Midweek Minutes. I hope to see you again next week. And by the way, I'm not Angie. I love me some chocolate cake. Bye-bye for now.